Ruth Bell's trunk hit the Voss Hotel porch before the breakfast bell stopped ringing. Elias Voss kicked it into the street and told every watching face, "Your dead husband ate the last of my credit." Ruth had one dented spice box, a 9-year-old son who had not eaten since dawn, and nowhere to sleep by nightfall. Behind Elias, Martha Bell, the sister-in-law who had promised them shelter, looked away. Then Elias put a hand on Jonas's shoulder. "The boy can stay and work. You can go." Ruth stepped between them, so fast the spice box rattled against her ribs. "He stays with me." Elias smiled like a man tasting sugar. "Then you both sleep in the street, unless you can pay for your room, your flour, your coffee, and the funeral plates your neighbors ate." The storekeeper across the road stopped sweeping. A freight clerk slowed his team. No one stepped up onto the porch. Martha whispered, "Ruth, don't make it worse." Ruth looked at the trunk, then at the street. Every door on Pecos Spur seemed shut. The bakery door was shut. The boarding house door was shut. Even the church door, 2 blocks down, looked too far away for a woman with no supper and a boy who had given her his last biscuit before dawn. The spice box was small enough to hide under her shawl. It was dented, blackened at one corner, and filled with little packets her mother had wrapped years before. Sage, red pepper, coffee bark, a pinch of nutmeg she had saved for Christmas and never used. Elias leaned closer. "You never could keep a man, Ruth. Maybe you can learn to keep dishes." A wagon stopped in the dust below the porch. The man holding the reins had a black hat pushed back from sun-browned eyes and a coat worn shiny at the cuffs. His team was hitched to 2 flour barrels and a coil of new rope. He looked from Ruth's trunk to Elias' hand, still hanging too close to Jonah's. "Voss," the man said, "take your hand off the boy." Elias straightened. "Sam Calder, this is hotel business." "No," Sam said. "It became street business when you threw it into the street." Ruth knew his name. Everybody in Pecos Spur knew Sam Calder of Mesa Lantern Ranch. He was the rancher whose hands rode into town thin and angry because he refused to buy Elias Voss's cooked meals at Voss prices. He was the rancher who ate beans out of a tin cup rather than let the hotel own his crew. Sam stepped down from the wagon. He did not touch Ruth. He did not touch Jonah's. He only picked up her trunk and set it upright as if it deserved better than street dust. Then he looked at Ruth. "Can you keep my kitchen?" The question was plain, not soft, not sweet. It landed like work, and Ruth's pride reached for it before her fear could stop her. "If your kitchen has a stove, a broom, and men willing to wash their hands," she said. One of the freight men laughed under his breath. Sam did not laugh. Something changed in his face, not pity, not exactly. Respect, maybe, or surprise that a woman with nowhere to stand still had her chin up. "It has a stove," he said. "The broom is poor, the men are worse. I pay $2 a week and board. Your boy eats. You sleep in the old washroom with a latch inside. If you want town again, my wagon brings you back with your wages in your hand." Ruth heard Elias make a small sound behind her. "She owes me," Elias said. Sam looked at him. "Then bring a bill to me after she earns wages, not before." Ruth knew better than to trust rescue too quickly. Hunger made any offer look like grace. "I do not work for debt I have not seen," she said, "and I do not give my boy for any account." Sam's mouth moved, almost a smile. "Good," he said. "I don't hire hunger, I pay work." Elias' smile thinned. A ranch kitchen is no place for a widow who can't keep her own room. Ruth lifted the spice box. A kitchen is exactly the place for a woman who knows what hunger costs. Sam held out one hand, not for her, but toward the wagon seat. "Then climb up, Mrs. Bell. Mesa Lantern eats at noon, whether it deserves to or not." Ruth turned to Martha one last time. Her sister-in-law's fingers were white around the door frame. Ruth saw shame there, but shame did not open a door. Shame did not feed a child. "My recipe book," Ruth said. "It was in the trunk." Martha's face broke. Elias answered for her. "Hotel property now, payment against credit." Jonas took Ruth's hand before she could speak. His fingers were cold. Ruth climbed into Sam Calder's wagon with her son beside her and the spice box in her lap. Sam lifted the trunk and back. He drove away while Elias stood on the hotel porch, smiling as if he had not lost anything yet. Mesa Lantern Ranch lay 4 miles east, where the yellow grass thinned and the Pecos wind dragged dust along the wagon ruts. The cookhouse stood apart from the main house, a low adobe room with a crooked stovepipe, a plank table, and a line of tin plates stacked like old shields. Sam stopped before the door and stepped down first. Ruth waited for him to go inside. He did not. He pushed the cookhouse door open and stood aside in the yard. "Your kitchen for a week's trial," he said. "My men come through that door for meals and leave by it when done. No man sleeps in here. The washroom is behind it. I put a latch on the inside this morning after my last cook quit." "Why did he quit?" Ruth asked. "He went to Voss Hotel for steadier pay and worse coffee." Jonas peered around Ruth. The boy's eyes went straight to the stove. "May I bring in kindling?" he asked. Sam looked at Ruth before answering the child. Ruth noticed that. A little thing, but little things told the truth before big speeches did. "If your mother allows it," Sam said. Ruth nodded. Jonas ran to the woodpile as if kindling were treasure. Inside, the cookhouse was rough but usable. The floor needed sand and hard hands. The bean pot had a burnt ring. A sack of onions slumped in the corner. 3 flour barrels stood near the pantry, 2 with no mark, 1 with a blue stamp half rubbed off. Ruth set her spice box on the shelf. "How many men?" she asked. 11 today, 14 by branding, maybe 20 if the North Pasture crew comes in. They will eat beans at noon. They have eaten beans for a month. Not my beans." Sam looked at her then, not at the torn cuff of her sleeve, not at the dust on her hem, at her face. "No," he said quietly, "I reckon not." Ruth felt heat rise in her cheeks and turned to the stove before he saw too much. A woman could be grateful for respect. She could even want to hear it again. But wanting was dangerous when her son was stacking kindling outside, and every good thing in her life had recently been priced by a man with a ledger. By noon, the cookhouse smelled of onions browned slow, beans brought back from punishment, and biscuits stretched thin but warm. Ruth made coffee strong enough to stand in the cup. She set Jonas to wiping plates and told him he was not serving men until she knew their manners. The first ranch hand through the door stopped so hard the man behind him ran into his back. "There food in here?" he asked. "No," Ruth said. "There is supper in a church dream. This is beans. Sit." The men stared. Then one laughed and the tightness in the room cracked. Sam came last. He took the plate she handed him and stood until she pointed at the bench. "Ranchers sit too," she said. "Yes, ma'am." The men laughed again, softer this time. Jonas smiled for the first time that day. Men waited. Bread passed hand to hand. Ruth saw hats come off before coffee was requested, and that told her more than any speech about safety could have. Jonas watched Sam when Sam reached for the last biscuit. Ruth watched too, though she pretended to rinse a spoon. Sam saw there was 1 biscuit left and broke it in half before taking any. He set the larger piece on Jonas's plate without making a show of it. Jonas looked at his mother for permission. Ruth nodded. That was when her fear shifted. It did not leave. It only made room for a smaller, more dangerous feeling. If Ruth's fight for her son has you with her, subscribe and stay for what she proves next. When the meal was done, no one left a full plate. 2 men came back to scrape the pot. One older hand named Tolliver took off his hat before asking if there might be coffee left. Ruth poured it. Sam watched from the doorway, not in the room, not crowding her, just watching his cold, hungry ranch become a place where men lowered their voices. That evening, he brought a folded paper to the cookhouse table. "Wage terms," he said, "plain writ, $2 a week, board for you and Jonas, washroom latch, wagon to town or Reseda whenever you ask, no claim on you, no claim on the boy, trial ends Saturday unless you choose longer." Ruth read it twice. "You write like a man afraid of being misunderstood," she said. "I am." That answer took her eyes from the paper. Sam leaned one shoulder against the door frame. The lamplight caught the tired line beside his mouth. "A desperate woman can be cheated even by kindness," he said. "I don't aim to be that kind of man. Ruth looked at the words again. No claim on you, no claim on the boy. Then I will keep your kitchen until Saturday, she said. And after Saturday? Ask me after I have been paid. This time he did smile. Before dusk, Ben Harker brought a folded freight notice and left it on the cookhouse table. Elias had written across it in a heavy hand. No more flour to Mesa Lantern until the Bell account is honored Saturday noon. Sam's jaw hardened, but Ruth took the paper first. He is not collecting debt, she said. He is trying to own my wages before I earn them. The next 3 days did not make Mesa Lantern easy. They made it alive, and Elias made sure no one forgot his shadow. Ruth scrubbed the table with sand until the wood came pale under her hands. Jonas learned which men wiped their boots and which had to be stared into shame. Tolliver patched the pantry shelf after Ruth caught him steadying it with his knee. Sam came to the cookhouse each morning with the quiet hope of a man who had not known he was waiting for a door to open. He never entered before Ruth said he could. He never spoke to Jonas as if the boy were a stray pup. On Wednesday night, Ben stopped by the water trough and would not look straight at Ruth. Saturday noon, he muttered. Mr. Voss says he will post the Bell account in every store window, says no decent place will hire a woman who feeds off debt. Jonas heard enough to go still. Ruth set one hand on his shoulder. Then Saturday noon had better find me with proof, she said. On Thursday, while measuring flour for biscuits, Ruth saw the blue stamp again. It marked the side of a sack tucked behind the clean barrels. Voss Hotel Supply, Pecos Spur. The top had been stitched closed with black thread. Sam's own sacks used plain brown twine. Ruth ran her finger over the stamp. Ben Harker, the teamster who had carried freight from town that morning, stood outside the open pantry door. When he saw her hand on the sack, his face went gray. Mr. Harker, Ruth said, did this come from Voss Hotel? Flour is flour, he muttered. Not when men pay for one kind and are given another. He swallowed, ask Mr. Calder. I am asking the man who unloaded it. Ben looked toward the yard, then away. I got a wife at Voss Laundry. I got 2 girls. Elias can put us out by dark. Ruth let go of the sack. Fear had a sound. It was not always a scream. Sometimes it was a grown man's whisper in a pantry. Before she could answer, Jonas appeared in the doorway. Ma, Mr. Sam says the North crew came early. Ruth turned. Sam stood beyond the boy, reading all 3 faces at once. Problem, he asked. Ruth could have said no. She had said no to trouble most of her married life because trouble did not care if a woman named it. This time she pointed to the blue stamp. That sack is not yours. Sam stepped close enough to see, but not close enough to crowd her. His jaw tightened. I told Voss last month I would not buy his flour. Then someone decided you would. Ben backed away. I just drive what I'm told. Sam looked at him. Who told you? Ben's mouth opened. Across the yard, a rider came in hard, and Elias Voss swung down from a black gelding as if he owned the dust it raised. Calder, he called, I hear your widow cook is feeding my flour to my old customers. The timing was too neat. Ruth felt it in her stomach. Sam did too. His eyes went from Elias to the blue-stamped sack. Elias strode toward the cookhouse with Martha behind him. Martha carried Ruth's recipe book under one arm. Ruth saw its brown cover and nearly stepped forward without thinking. That book is mine, she said. Martha flinched. Elias smiled, then pay your account. Sam's hand moved slightly, then stopped. He was angry enough to act. He chose not to. Ruth saw the choice cost him. This is ranch ground, he said. Say what you came to say. Gladly. Your hands ate at my hotel long enough to know clean food. If they sicken under her care, I won't have Pecos Spur blame Voss flour. No one is sick, Ruth said. Elias looked at the stove. Not yet. The words settled like grit. Then Elias turned so the ranch hands could hear him. Saturday noon, I post the Bell account on every window in town. Her room, her flour, her husband's funeral plates, and the boys' keep. Any employer who pays her pays me first. If she cannot cover it, Jonas works my scullery until the account is clean. Ruth felt Jonah's press against her skirt. You will not price my son, she said. Elias smiled at the recipe book under Martha's arm. I already priced everything else you had. That night Ruth lay awake in the washroom with Jonas asleep on a pallet beside her. The latch Sam had promised held firm. The little room smelled of soap, sun-baked adobe, and the sage packet she had tucked under Jonas's blanket. She should have felt safe. Instead, she heard Elias saying, not yet. Near dawn, she rose and went to the pantry. The blue-stamped sack sat where she had left it. She did not use it. She cut flour from Sam's plain barrel, made biscuits for 14 men, and watched every bite vanish. At the end of breakfast, Tolliver frowned into his plate. Biscuits fine, he said. Moss nodded, better than fine. Ruth had just let herself breathe when a shout came from the yard. One of the north pasture hands bent over beside the water trough, spitting. Another threw a biscuit into the dirt. Sour, the man gasped, bitter as lye. 2 hands backed away from Ruth's table, as if sickness could jump from wood to skin. Voss warned us, one muttered. Tolliver looked at Jonas, then moved one hard step closer to the boy instead of away from him. Ruth froze. She had not served them from her pan. The north pasture men had come late. Jonas had carried a covered plate to the yard after she turned to the stove. The plate sat now near the trough, and Ruth saw black thread caught under the cloth. Elias rode in before Sam crossed the yard. Too quick, far too quick. There it is, Elias called. A widow with no room tries to keep a ranch kitchen and poisons the hands before Saturday. Jonas ran toward Ruth, frightened. Elias pointed at him. That boy should not be left in her care. I can use him at the hotel where meals are watched. Sam stepped between Elias and Jonas. He did not draw a gun. He did not raise his voice. Say one more word about taking that boy, Sam said, and every man here will know you came for a child before you came for the truth. The yard went quiet. Ruth looked at the plate, then at the pantry door. Someone had taken from the blue-stamped sack after she refused to use it. Someone had wanted the bad bite found outside in front of men, where shame could spread faster than proof. Martha stood near Elias' horse, clutching the recipe book. Ruth's anger did not burn hot, it went clear. Mr. Calder, she said, do I still have wages through Saturday? Sam turned, you do. Then I am still your cook. You are. Then no man touches my pantry until I say. Elias laughed. Hear that? She thinks your pantry is hers. Sam did not look away from Ruth. Today, he said, it is. If frontier women fighting for home are your kind of trail, subscribe and stay with this story to the end. For a breath, Ruth wanted to cry. She did not. Tears would have pleased Elias. Instead, she lifted the bad biscuit from the dirt, wrapped it in a clean towel, and carried it inside. By noon, Elias had done more than accuse. He sent word through town that Mesa Lantern's hands had been poisoned. He told the freight office Sam would lose the next flour shipment unless he signed a hotel supply order. He told 2 ranchers coming for branding day that they would be fools to eat from a widow who had been put out of her own room. Sam found Ruth at the cookhouse threshold, washing the same pan for the 3rd time. I can take you to Reseda, he said. Ruth kept scrubbing. I know. There is a church widow there who lets rooms. I can send wages through Tolliver. Jonas would be away from this. She looked up. He was not dismissing her. That almost hurt worse. Do you want me gone? Sam's answer came too fast to be polished. No. The words stood between them, bare and honest. Ruth's hands went still in the wash water. Sam took off his hat. I want you safe more than I want my kitchen kept, and that is turning into a problem for me. The wind moved dust along the yard. From the woodpile, Jonas pretended not to listen. What kind of problem? Ruth asked. Sam looked toward the pasture where his thin cattle moved through brown grass. The kind where a man starts hoping a woman chooses his table after she has every reason not to. Ruth set the pan down. If I go now, Elias keeps my book. He keeps the account. He keeps the story that I spoiled your food and could not care for my son. If I cannot prove it before those branding crews ride out tomorrow, Elias' lie becomes the only story Pecos Spur remembers. Then tell me what you need. 2 pans, 2 sacks, every man who tasted the bad biscuit, Ben Harker if he has any courage left, and you to stand where all can see you are not saving me. Sam's brow pulled. What am I doing then? Letting me work. A slow, painful pride moved through his face. Yes, ma'am. And after? After what? After Saturday, if you ask me anything that is not about wages. Sam held her gaze. If I court you, Ruth Bell, it will be after you can leave. She had been hungry, frightened, insulted, and accused. Still, those words found a place in her that had not been touched by hunger or fear. Then help me make sure I can, she said. Branding day brought men from 3 ranches, dust from 100 hooves, and Elias Voss dressed in a black coat too fine for a cookhouse yard. He arrived with Martha in his wagon and Ben Harker riding behind, pale as old flour. Ruth had set a table outside the cookhouse where everyone could see it. On one end sat Sam's plain flour sack, tied with brown twine. On the other sat the blue-stamped Voss sack, stitched with black thread. Between them were 2 iron pans, 2 clean bowls, and Ruth's spice box. Jonas stood by Tolliver. Ruth had told him exactly where to stand, and the old hand had sworn no one would move the boy short of the Almighty. Elias looked at the table and smiled. A little show, he said. That won't make bad food clean. No, Ruth said, but it may show who made it bad. Martha's eyes filled. Ruth did not soften, not yet. Sam stood near the table but not at its head. He had done what she asked. This was her kitchen, her test, her danger. Ruth opened Sam's plain sack first. She let every man see the brown twine, the clean smell, the pale flour. She mixed water, salt, and a pinch from her spice box. The dough came smooth. Then she opened the Voss sack. The sour smell rose before she reached inside. Men shifted. The neighboring rancher, who had arrived laughing with Elias, stopped smiling and moved his hotel account book to Ruth's side of the table. Tolliver turned his meal token face down. Martha pressed the recipe book against her chest. Ruth lifted a handful of flour. Gray specks moved in it. Under the top layer, pressed against the side, was a scrap of blue hotel towel. She held it up. This was packed inside the sack that appeared in my pantry, she said. Not on the outside, inside. That is Voss towel cloth, Martha whispered, loud enough for the nearest men to hear. Elias rolled his eyes. Women hide rags in kitchens every day. Ruth looked at Ben. The teamster stared at his boots. Elias turned on him. You keep your mouth shut if you want your wife under my roof. That was his mistake. Every man in the yard heard the threat. Ben looked up, and his shame had become something sharper. He told me to switch the sack, Ben said. Elias' face changed. Ben's voice shook, but it did not stop. He said Mrs. Bell would use what was nearest once the breakfast rush came. When she didn't, he told me to put 2 biscuits from the bad mix under the North Crew cloth. Ruth heard Jonah's gasp. She kept her eyes on Elias. Say why, she told Ben. Ben swallowed. So Mr. Calder would sign the hotel supply order, so nobody would hire her, so the boy could work off the Bell account. Elias lunged for the blue sack. Ruth grabbed it first and pulled it behind her. The flour spilled across her skirt and the table, but she did not let go. Sam moved then. 1 step only, enough to put himself between Elias and Ruth without taking the sack from her hands. Careful, Sam said. Elias pointed at him. You think one frightened driver ruins me? I hold half the food credit in Pecos Spur. Tolliver stepped forward and laid his Mesa Lantern meal token on the table. Not mind. Moss followed, then another hand, then 2 riders from the T-bar who had come only to watch. One by one, tokens, folded accounts, and hotel meal slips hit the table beside the bad flour. Elias stared as if he had never imagined hungry men could refuse the man who sold food. Sam took the hotel supply order from his vest pocket. Elias had sent it that morning with a blank line for Sam's signature. Sam tore it once, then again. Mesa Lantern buys flour through the freight office, he said, and pays Ruth Bell to keep its kitchen. The T-Bar rancher laid his Voss meal book beside the torn order. Close my account. The second rancher placed his book on top of it. Mine too. Ben looked Elias in the face. From today on, I deliver only what the freight ticket names. No private switches. One of the neighboring ranchers cleared his throat. If Mrs. Bell keeps a roster, I will put 8 hands on it during fall gather. 6 from me, another said. Ruth's fingers tightened on the ruined sack. Elias' voice rose. She owes me, her room, her husband's plates, the book she claims. I can file an account. Martha stepped forward then. The recipe book was in her hands. For a moment, Ruth saw the woman who had sat with her through fever nights. Then she saw the woman who had watched her trunk go into the street. Martha held out the book. Martha opened the back cover of the recipe book and pulled out a folded receipt. Elias' own handwriting crossed the bottom. Funeral plates paid in full. The funeral plates were paid, she said. Elias wheeled toward her. Martha flinched but did not retreat. Ruth's husband left $7 in my keeping, she said. I gave Elias the book and trunk because he said my room credit would vanish if I did not. I let her stand outside. Her voice broke. I did it. Ruth took the recipe book. It was not forgiveness. Not yet. It was proof that shame could finally do something useful. Elias tried one last time. He grabbed Jonah's by the sleeve. Every hand at the table stood. No one reached for a weapon. They simply closed every path between Elias and the boy. Elias glanced toward his wagon. Even Ben had turned the team away from him. The yard moved before Sam did. Tolliver caught Elias' wrist. Moss stepped between Elias and the wagon. Ben backed the team another pace away. Ruth set the blue sack down and walked to her son. Take your hand off my boy, she said. This time Elias did. Not because he had grown kind, because every man he had fed on credit had stopped obeying him. By sunset, Elias Voss left Mesa Lantern without his supply order, without his meal tokens, without Ben Harker's silence, without the T-Bar account, without the second rancher's account, and without the right to speak Jonas's name as debt. He left his blue-stamped sack on Ruth's table because no one would carry it for him. Martha stayed. Ruth made her wait until the men had eaten clean biscuits from clean flour. Then she handed Martha an apron. 3 Saturdays, Ruth said. You will help me cook for any woman in Pecos Spur put out for credit. You will say whose book this was in front of them. Martha nodded through tears. After that, Ruth said, we will see if family can begin with truth. It was more mercy than Elias got. It was less than Martha wanted. It was exactly what Ruth could give without lying to herself. Sam found Ruth at the pantry after the last wagon rolled out. He carried a new brass key in his open palm and a small wage book under his arm. This belongs to the person keeping the kitchen, he said. Ruth looked at the key. Not to the rancher. The rancher can knock. Jonas, sleepy and flour-dusted, placed the tin spice box on the highest shelf he could reach. Ma, he said, is this our kitchen now? Ruth looked at Sam. He did not answer for her. He stood outside the pantry threshold with his hat in his hands and waited like a man who understood that a door was not open unless she opened it. It is my kitchen to keep, Ruth said, and our place to leave if we choose. Sam's eyes warmed. Yes, ma'am. On Sunday, Ruth paid herself first from the wage book because Sam told her a paid woman stood straighter than a grateful one. She put 2 coins in Jonas's palm and told him he had earned them wiping plates, not being pitied. Then she walked to the cookhouse door. Sam waited in the yard, on the far side of the threshold, hat in hand. He did not step in. Ruth opened the door herself. Mr. Calder, she said, you may ask now. Sam looked at the key in her hand, the boy at her side, and the woman standing free before him. Mrs. Bell, he said, I would be proud to court the woman who kept my kitchen and made it hers. Ruth locked the cookhouse herself and slipped the brass key into her pocket. Through the window, her battered trunk rested beneath the shelf where the recipe book and spice box were safe. She took Jonas's hand, then offered her other hand to Sam. This time, the door closed behind her only because she held the key. Subscribe for more clean, romantic Wild West stories where rejected women, lonely ranchers, and brave families find home by choice.